So what do Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Idalia, Hurricane Irma, and Tropical Storm Debbie all have in common? Well, all of these storms impacted Sarasota directly, and they also affected Sarasota's housing market. I mean, think about it. If you're somebody who only has vacationed or visited Sarasota, and you might be considering buying a home here, now all of a sudden with the news hitting you with all of this major damage, making it look like every square inch of Sarasota has been blasted off the face of the earth, or that, it's underwater, you probably aren't gonna wanna be buying here. But what if I told you that this is probably one of the best times to purchase? Let me tell you why. What's up, guys? If you're new here, my name is Zach Payne, and I'm a born and raised local and real estate agent here in Sarasota. And in this video, I'm going to be telling you why it might be in your best interest to purchase a home after a storm. Oh, and make sure to subscribe to the channel because in tomorrow's video, we're going to be exploring one of my absolute favorite neighborhoods here in Sarasota. Oh, and a little spoiler, it didn't experience any flooding at all during the most recent storm, while other parts of town looked like this. So stay tuned for that video tomorrow. All right, now let's get into it. Firstly, sellers who have just been through a hurricane now know that they're at a disadvantage, even if their neighborhoods didn't get directly affected by storm damage. Their potential buyer pool has now significantly decreased depending on the severity of the storm. You gotta remember here that a majority of people have really short-term memory when it comes to stuff like this. And I saw this with all three hurricanes. I remember I had these sellers way back right after Hurricane Ian, I believe it was, had hit. They had this big, beautiful home west of the trail. It was this brand new Key West style home. It had all of the safety features. It had impact windows and doors. All the landscaping had just been redone. They even made sure that there were no major trees or bushes in the way of the house, that if a storm did come, it wouldn't affect the home. I remember telling them that if they wanted to put their house up on the market, now would probably not be the right time because it would sell for less than what it really should go for. Most people don't buy right after a storm because the thought of another storm is right at the top of their mind. And if they've never really even experienced a storm before, this can be a really nerve-wracking and new thing to have to go through. But these sellers needed to move, so they decided to list their house. Their house inevitably sold for right around $50,000, I believe it was, less than where I thought it should have been sold, based on comps in the market. But again, it was all about timing. And even then I was happy because we had hardly had any interest in the home for the first 2 weeks on the market, even though that's supposed to be the most active time for listings. People just weren't looking. My sellers were becoming really concerned and they asked if they should reduce their price. I told them that if they wanted to sell their home sooner rather than later, then it probably would be in their best interest to reduce the price just to maybe entice a buyer. So that's what we did. So we ended up dropping it like $10,000 after 2 weeks, and then that's when we received an offer. But that offer still ended up being around $40,000 less than the asking price, which we had just reduced another $10,000, but it was still within that realm that my sellers were willing to let it go for. So they decided to take the offer because, heck, they didn't know when the next one was gonna come. They already had been on the market for 2 weeks. They had done a price reduction. We didn't have a ton of interest. They didn't know what was going to happen, especially kind of with hurricane season continuing to come along. They were worried, so they just took it. All right, so I'm editing this video and I'm going through all the footage, and I realized I forgot to mention that it's kind of important to know that back when Hurricane Ian hit, it was around 2022, September. So that meant it was kind of like the peak of COVID for Florida real estate. I mean, homes were selling within days, like usually over asking price. So for our place to have really little to no interest for 2 weeks was a big deal. So the moral of the story is that real estate has a lot to do with human psychology and emotions. My sellers knew that it was going to be an uphill battle when listing their home right after a major storm and during hurricane season in Florida, and they were mentally prepared for that. The buyers of the home got a $50,000 discount because they bought at a time when sellers were willing to accept a lower price based on the circumstances. Now, my second reason why it might be beneficial to you to buy a home after a storm is because you're gonna know what areas respond better to hurricane conditions, and you can plan according to that. I'll give you two really good examples of this. The first one is a neighborhood called Laurel Meadows in East Sarasota. For 23 years, this neighborhood hasn't experienced any significant damage from any tropical storm or hurricane that has ever come around until Debbie hit. Now, the reason why this neighborhood flooded so badly is still kind of up in the air and unknown, but it's besides the point right now. At this point, they are calling it a 1 in 1,000 year flood, although it's extremely unfortunate for all of those homeowners who were affected by the damages. But now, buyers can now take this information and make an informed decision on what areas they might want to purchase in. Now, you would think that new construction neighborhoods being built up to the latest industry standards and safety codes would have no chance at all of flooding, and you would probably be able to buy with peace of mind knowing that these homes are built up much higher than maybe older homes. But take a look at the neighborhood right next to Laurel Meadows called Worthington. It would probably have you thinking again. This is what the entrance to that neighborhood looked like 3 days after the storm. I mean, these are unprecedented events that no insurance company, no mortgage company, and no homeowner could have predicted before this happened. Now, another great example of this is a neighborhood called Bent Tree. Now, one thing that I've found that most people are looking for is a neighborhood with really mature landscaping. Nobody wants to drive through a neighborhood where it looks like the builder just threw in a couple baby trees and a few bushes and called it a day. You know what I mean? Well, Bent Tree is a perfect example of a really mature and landscaped neighborhood. Now, the issue with that is that it either always has full branches or basically full-on trees falling down whenever a hurricane comes. And no, these are not just like little baby trees. I'm talking about fully grown 20 to 30-year-old oak trees. When people are looking at houses, sometimes they get so caught up in the cuteness of things and they forget to look at the bigger picture. But that's where a really good real estate agent should come in. And that brings me on to my next point. As a born and raised local who has lived through more hurricanes and tropical storms than I can count, there are major things that I look for when I'm either purchasing a home for myself or for the clients that I'm representing to ensure maximum safety from either a hurricane or from flooding events. Number one is I'm evaluating and helping my clients understand flood mapping here in Sarasota. I believe that it is so important to buy in the best flood designations possible when buying a home in Sarasota. And that would be Zone X when looking at a flood map. An X flood zone, according to floridadisaster.org, means a 0.2% or less chance of annual flooding, which kind of correlates to 1 every 500 years. This is, again, the best possible spot that you can buy a home in here in Sarasota. And this is the zone that a majority of homes are built in. Now, number two is while you are looking and exploring the area, you need to consider if there is or if there's going to be planning for new construction areas going on around you, regardless of whether it's residential or commercial. The more building that's going on near you, the higher likelihood is of irrigation, runoff, retention ponds, and all of these things being changed and affected, which can negatively impact your home. Now, number three, I'm looking at landscaping. This is a huge point of disagreement, especially for me and my girlfriend. Now, she loves big oak trees that have large canopies of shade that can pretty much cover the whole yard. She dreams of having picnics under the trees and building a swing for our future kids to play on, which I'll be honest, are really great and nice thoughts. But the only thing that I can think about is when another storm inevitably rolls through and either breaks one of those huge branches down and shatters one of our windows, or worse, puts a hole in our roof. Or even worse than that though is, and I've seen this happen before, is when enough rainfall from the outer bands of a hurricane saturate the ground enough to soften the soil. Then when the strong winds come through and totally uproot massive oak trees, and now it's basically inside your living room. Although it's kind of annoying having to think this way all the time, all of my clients are very appreciative of this line of thought when it comes to their first Florida home purchase, especially if they have no experience with storms or flooding. Now, at number four is the elevation. Now, this one can really be kind of easy to see even with the naked eye. I'm looking at the elevation of homes compared to the street. All homes kind of sit slightly above street level. However, the higher up your home is from the street, obviously the safer you're going to be in the event of a flood. Now, lastly, I'm looking at the spacing in between homes, more so in new construction as compared to homes built prior to 2014. Now, that's because new construction homes are being built so close together. Some builders aren't even digging a deep enough ditch between the homes for water to run off and away from the houses. Now, this can lead to standing water, which should never be near a house at all, especially the foundation of your home. Now, I do want to say that although hurricanes and flooding do suck, and that they're almost this necessary evil that, we have to live with if you want to live in paradise, there are a lot of things that you can do to ensure you, your family, and your home stay safe and dry during all of these events. Now, if you're interested in buying a home here in Sarasota, click the first link in the description below to schedule a free phone consultation with me. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.